Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. This is Friday. It's January the 12th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and it was just another really what I would call a slow, low volume, choppy range day again. And the range was pretty tight from about 1667 to around 1672. We did break out of that on this big run up here in the late afternoon. That was really the best move of the day. This was a pretty good move off the high of this range, but this was the best move of the day probably. I wasn't trading by this time, but I went ahead and marked it. I'll explain it when we get there. But there was a little bit of an upward bias to this thing. There was kind of some upward channels kind of working here, but for the most part, you just had to look at this as a range day. But this would have given you an idea of where to expect your reversals and your pullbacks to. Um, I was really looking at this channel to begin with, between these two lines, and then when we broke out, of course, your next target would have been up here, and when we broke down, your target was down here, and that's exactly where we went to. And if you just take an arrow and you measure that, you'll see that all four of these are pretty much measured moves, and you can just kind of see that right there. They're all about the same, and they just give you a place to look for support and resistance. And but the main support and resistance you had to be worried about were this high and this low, and what's in between. So I marked the trades here. There were quite a few of them. There's actually some you really probably could have taken these off the lows. I didn't mark them. If you saw them, any of these buys off the lows were probably good buys, because these are dojis. This one is, and this one is. You didn't want to probably enter on this one, but you could have entered on these two the same way you did this one, and because the range just kind of moved up temporarily for a while, and you can see that if you move it up. But I believe the overall range is down here. So there are two. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go ahead and mark those in green. Because they're a little more aggressive, because you're not quite down there to the low. This one would have definitely been a little more aggressive, because this was, but after you had this bounce and this bounce, this one, I might even mark that one in blue. I'm going to go ahead and mark that one in blue, because it's pretty obvious by that point that this is strong support right there. And that's another small doji, lets you get in with a small stop, and you can see you were in and out of that one pretty quickly. So but let's talk about the trades. That really added a couple more trades to the whole scenario. But when I came in, this is all we had, not much. We had a failed second entry long right here. Notice this, you got a new high, first entry long, pull back, second entry long, and look at that reversal bar. A nice trap. Just, don't even fool around with one like that. Just drop you a stop there at the very least, wait for it to trigger, and then drop you a limit right there at the end, or where your stop would go. And you didn't have a lot of time to fool with that one. It moved down pretty quickly, so I don't know if a limit order would have been filled. But on a trap like that, you want to just, as soon as it closes, have a stop right there. And then guess what? Now we're heading up. You want to buy. Notice that strong support. Look at that reversal bar right off of it. This didn't hang around at all. It went up pretty quick. Then you got a first entry long, pull back, second entry long, and that's a failed second entry long after a pretty good move down. So that's another trap, almost the same thing, just a different version of it. And again, a quick, easy move, and then it bounces. And because you did bounce here before, if you want to be aggressive, there was a long here. It's not a beautiful setup, but there's a doji with a chance to get long at this support with a small stop. So, and it was easy scalp. I marked it in green because it's a little more aggressive, but if you saw it and took it, there was nothing wrong with it. Then again, you found resistance up here at the top. We broke higher by a tick, and you might have gone short below that bar, but I believe you were better to wait on this one, and you could again use a stop or a limit order. and quick easy scalp, nothing more. Then we bounce again right off this line, and this is by this time I've got this channel going here, and again it's right across those lows, so a good place to go long. Another easy scalp. You might even got you might have even been ridden this one back to the top, but I would have exited when we couldn't go any higher than that and made that real bearish bar. So you might have got some points out of on your runners on that one if you held any. If you were like me, I was just scalping out back here at this area, and I just re-entered again right here. This is just two-legged pullback, and notice that it's a breakout pullback. And notice how each of these is going a little higher, and so there's a little bit of an upward bias here, and you can see the EMA starting to turn up here. This was a great place to enter. This is a real bullish bar, but this is one when it broke higher, I'd use a limit order, and I dropped it in a couple of ticks back, and it did get filled. Quick, easy scalp, and then we found resistance up here, and it turned down. Now you got two legs up, a double top on a rangy day. It's a breakout of all that resistance across there, failed break. Great place to go short right there. You might have thought about using a limit order here. I believe it would have worked. I just used a stop. It took it a minute to get going, but it dropped on down there pretty quickly. And guess what? Any runners were good off of this one. And you could have ridden this all the way to low, and this is where you exit, right down here when you find, right when you get down to the lower resistance. And you might have even thought about exiting here because it did bounce, and I almost let them run me out there, but I held on to see if we'd make one more push down, and of course it did go, and I exited right down here on that one. Then you got a double bottom here. Actually, this one I meant to put in green. We've been bouncing down here all day, but it's not a great setup. It is a double bottom, and there's a little failed break, and it's really almost a failed second entry short too, because there's one leg back, pull, move down, another leg back. So it's kind of like a little two-legged pullback. So there's probably some short traders. That's real bearish, and I was tempted to go short here, but there's no room to get out. Every once in a while it'll break through there, but until there's been a breakthrough there, this is really dangerous to go short. So no short there, but when it bounced, you might have considered going long right there. It was good for a scalp, nothing more. But when it came down and bounced there again, and had this is like a little break, bounce up, and then another attempt, and then I liked going high right there above those two matching highs. Again, it took off real quickly, easy scalp, and it came back and got the runners, and then that was it for me today. But I did want to talk about this one. It looked like we were going to go lower again, but notice how everything's coming off the low, so you got to assume we're probably going back to the high now. Even though we're still within these lines, you can see the EMA turning up, and we're making higher highs and higher lows. Notice this higher high here that's higher than this one and this one, and we got a triple bottom there, and we're making higher lows here. So when you got this short, you didn't want to be going short out of all this mess right here anyway. And so when you got this short that failed, you got a short trap, great place to go long. And look at that thing. It took it a minute. It had to work through this resistance line right here. But once it got through there, it was off to the races, and it moved pretty quickly. I don't think there was any news that came out at 4 o'clock. Let me just double check and see. No, the only news was that after the market closed. So I don't know what. Evidently, just the trap. It had everybody trapped, and they just kept working it higher, and people exiting and more people jumping in. It's the only thing I can figure, unless there's some news event that I missed that's not on my news alert there. So, but anyway, it was a pretty good trading day. Even though it was choppy today, we've had a few days of it, so you should have been more comfortable with it. I know I felt more comfortable today, but it was a little bit easier to read, and the scalps were, a little bit quicker today. It wasn't one of these where you got in and it kept going up and down before it went on. Most of them moved on pretty quickly today. So my guess is that everybody, had gotten used to the volatility, and so now maybe everybody's getting, kind of back in the low with the typical rangy, low volatility, low volume days. And but don't let this slow you to sleep, because the next thing you know, you'll have one break out and run for days and days and days, and you'll be thinking, oh, so just, that's the key, is not to let it lull you to sleep, and to be prepared in case it changes again. So I got a couple of emails from some guys. Some of you had, I haven't gotten any really down emails lately from people that are saying they're really struggling. Doesn't mean there's not people out there struggling, but I just hadn't gotten any emails. So, I'm not sure if people are grasping it better and having better luck, or if they're just not telling me that, they're struggling a little bit. But most of the emails that I have gotten have been positive, saying, wow, this stuff really works. Everything you say tends to be right on the money, and I don't say that to toot my own horn or anything, but this stuff works, and I'm some of this stuff I figured out on my own, but it's a lot of this stuff is basic price action. It just maybe you've just a little different than the way you've heard it before. So it's no great revelation on my part. It's just putting it all together and explain it in a way that some people are getting it, and so I hope if you're watching the videos and trying to learn to trade, hopefully you're getting it. So it took me a while. It takes you don't learn this stuff overnight. You hear me say that all the time. If you're thinking this get rich quick, you're in the wrong place, and you're probably going to lose a lot of money. So forget that. This is like anything else. If you want to become a doctor, think about all the years that you have to put into education and study and then residency, and then you got to either go to work for somebody or open your practice, and it takes time to build your clientele. But once you get there, boy, is it worth the wait and all the hard work. And trading's the same way. It takes a long time to get there and a lot of hard work, but buddy, when you get there, it's very rewarding. So just understand that this is not a get rich quick thing that happens overnight and that you learn real quickly. Sure, there's some gamblers that come in and take a big gamble and get lucky, but those guys almost always give it back fairly quickly, because it's too easy, and they think it's really that easy, and then they find out, hey, I just got lucky. So if you do happen to come in and gamble and hit it big and get lucky, put that money to work somewhere else. Don't put it back in the market unless you can read a price chart and you are a good trader. Then maybe you invest it, but very few people get lucky like that. I know I never could. So, but anyway, I'm on my soapbox today. I'm gonna get off of it. It's Friday. I'm leaving out of here. It's a little bit later. I've had some things. I actually stopped trading a little bit after lunch, and I left for a little while, and I came back just to do the video. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm out of here. I'm starting my weekend. I hope you do the same. But I'm going to wrap it up. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.